Punch, or the London Charivari, Volume 156, the 14th of May, 1919 ***** Punch, or the London Charivari, Volume 156, the 14th of May, 1919. Charivari. Where stands Germany today? Asks a headline. She doesn't. At least Count Brockdorff-Rantzau kept his seat while addressing the peace conference. This discourtesy, however, need not be taken too seriously. It is pointed out that by the time Germany has complied with the peace terms, she may not be able to sit down. The Soviet government has adopted a new calendar, in which the year will commence on the 25th of October. We ourselves have always associated the first day of January with some of the most repugnant features of capitalism. A resident of Balham who was last week bitten by a member of a jazz band is now wondering whether he ought to submit to the past year treatment or just allow the thing to run its own course. Several of our migratory birds have not yet returned to these shores. It is supposed that the spirit of competition has been aroused in them by the repeated rumors of a transatlantic flight and that they have started to race on foot across Europe. Where is all the cheese? Asks an evening news headline. A correspondent has suggested that it might be nesting time. Wallace's Corporation has decided to exclude boys under 16 from the municipal golf course. No child, the mayor explains, should be allowed to witness its father's shame. Steps should be taken to make the clergy presentable and attractive, says the vicar of St. Jude's, Hampstead. A little baby ribbon insertion, it is suggested, would give a certain dash to the carpet slippers without impairing their essential dignity. The Ebbvale cat that is suspected of having rabies is still under observation. The belief is gaining ground, however, that she was merely trying to purr in Welsh. North of England gas managers have passed a resolution urging the appointment of a Director General of Light, Heat and Power. But surely the functions of such an office are already performed by Mr. Speaker. Swallows, says a contemporary, have been seen flying over the Serpentine. Most of the snap was taken out of the performance by the fact that none of them delivered the Daily Mail. A fine specimen of the rare white female dolphin, a very infrequent visitor to our shores, has been killed off Yarmouth. We'll learn white female dolphins to visit us. The National Historical Society have cabled to Mr. Wilson that they are supporting Italy's claim to Fiume. It is only fair to point out that Mr. Smith of Norwood has not yet reached a decision on the point. A Sinn Féin MP has been recaptured at Fine Glass, Co. Dublin. It would be interesting to know why. The Board of Agriculture are of the opinion that rabies might be spread by rats. In view of this, there is some talk of calling upon householders to muzzle their rats. According to a Sunday paper, a husband recently stated that a former lodger ran away with his wife. She was a German, and nobody can understand why they ran. An anarchist arrested in Holland with a bomb in his possession explained that it was for the ex-Kaiser. We have since been informed that the retired monarch denies that he ever placed such an order with the gentleman. A well-known golf club has recently engaged a totally deaf caddy. The idea is to induce more clergymen to join the club. As no joke about the Isle of Wight Railway has appeared in any comic paper for at least a month, it is supposed that either a new engine has been bought or that the old one has been thoroughly overhauled. A picture postcard sent off in 1910 has just arrived at its destination. It is presumed that one of the sorters who originally handled it is breaking up his collection. It will take 10 years, says a post office official, to replace the present telephone system with automatic exchanges. Persons who have already registered calls are urged not to make too much of this slight additional delay. Everyone, says the Secretary of the National Federation of Fish Friers, wants the trade to be a respectable one. On the other hand, it is just that smack which it has of oriental debauchery that makes it appeal so strongly to the idle rich. Salmon taken from some parts of the Tyne are alleged to smell of petrol and taste like tar. Otherwise they are quite all right. An American doctor states that British people sleep too much. No blame, however, attaches to America. After all, she invented the gramophone. The end of the dog, says a contemporary, is in sight. Then it can't be a dachshund. Protect our protectors. Protect our protectors. Barbed wire mesh overalls designed to prevent the police from striking as a protest against having to intern unmuzzled dogs. Unionist agent wanted. Liberal salary offered. Times. Just the job for a coalitionist. One must, however, remember that the Turk, and hurl upon him what execrations you may, is still the text upside down, gentleman of the Near East. Weekly paper. He may be the gentleman of the Near East, but that has not saved him from being turned down. The counter-order of the Bath. A standing committee of the House of Commons has refused to vote £3,800 for a lift and a second bathroom in the proposed official residence of the Lord Chancellor within the precincts of the House of Lords. In a letter to Sir Alfred Mand, Lord Birkenhead wrote, "I am sure both yourself and the committee will understand that my object in writing is to make it plain that I never asked anyone to provide me with a residence, and that I am both able and willing, in a house of my own, to provide my family and myself with such bathroom and other accommodation as may be reasonably necessary. I did not ask for it. I never yearned within the royal court to board and bed, like all the other honours I have earned. I had this greatness thrust upon my head, but if the precincts are to be my lair, then for my comfort ministers must cater. I want a second bath inserted there, also an elevator. Daily fatigued by those official cares which my exalted dignity assumes, I could not ask my feet to climb the stairs which link that mansion's 33 rooms, and, if the law must have so clean a fame that none can point to where a speck of dust is, a single bathroom cannot meet the claim of equitable justice. My wants are modest, you will please remark. I crave no vintage of the champagne zone, no stalled chargers neighing for the park, no 9x5 cigars. I have my own. I do not ask, who am the flower of thrift, for Orient rugs or Persian apparatus. Nothing is lacking save a bath and lift to fill my soul's hiatus. And, should my plea for reasonable perks, barely £4,000, be flatly quashed, should kind Sir Alf, Commissioner of Works, be forced to leave me liftless and half-washed, then for these homely needs of which I speak, content with my old pittance from the nation, in Grosvenor Square, or Berkeley, I will seek private accommodation. OS back to the cam. College head porters as a class assuredly rank amongst the dignified things of the earth. One may admire the martial splendor of a brigadier general, and it is not to be denied that rear admirals have a certain something about them which excites both awe and delight, but they are never quite the same thing as a college head porter. There may be weak spots in the profession, and indeed in one or two of the less self-respecting colleges the head porters scarcely rise above the level of the dons, but these are distinctly exceptional. As a class they stand, as I said, amongst the dignified things of life. Parsons is our head porter, and perhaps he is the sublimest of them all. Freshmen raise their squares to him, and Oriental students can rarely bring themselves to enter the porter's lodge during their first term without previously removing their shoes. Few except fourth-year men have the temerity to address him as Parsons to his face. It seems such an awful thing to do, like keeping a chapel in bedroom slippers or walking arm in arm with a blue. You feel awkward about it. In order to give you a shadowy idea of Parsons' majesty, I must hark back for a moment to a certain day in November 1914, when Biffin and I, after a brief dalliance with the CUOTC, left Cambridge to join our regiments. It was pouring with rain, but we were elated in spirit. We had our commissions, things were going to happen, we felt almost in case to jostle a constable. As we passed out through the porter's lodge, Parsons sat at his table, imperturbable and austere, his eagle eyes flashing from beneath his bushy brows and his venerable beard sweeping his breast. At that moment Biffin, overwrought with excitement, forgot himself. "Cheerio, Parsons, old cracker," he shouted wildly, "how's the weather suit your whiskers?" Then, realizing the enormity of his act, he turned suddenly pale, dashed out into the road and dived panic-stricken into the waiting taxi. We made good our escape. Those 7 stars represent the war. I take a childlike pleasure in dismissing Armageddon in this brusque fashion. If you have had anything at all to do with it, you will understand. Having been demobilized at a relatively early date, out of respect for our pivotal intellects, Biffin and I were bound for Cambridge, to take up the threads of learning where Wilhelm had snapped them some years previously. Both of us have changed a little. Biffin has been burnt brown by the sons of Egypt, while I wear a small souvenir of Flanders on my upper lip. "I wonder if Parsons will remember us," said Biffin as the train thundered into the station. "Of course he will," I replied. "Parsons never forgets anything." "I doubt it," said Biffin. As our taxi drew up before the portals of Alma Mater, the first person we saw, standing on the steps of the porter's lodge, was Parsons. He was as Olympian as ever. As soon as you saw him you felt that, though they might abolish compulsory Greek or introduce a finance tripos, they would never be able to subdue the ancient spirit of the university. A single glimpse of Parsons, standing erect in all his traditional glory, showed up people like Mr. H. G. Wells in their true perspective in a moment. It did one good. We approached him. "Good afternoon, Parsons," we said, with a brave attempt at sang-froid. Parsons regarded us. "Good afternoon, Mr. Jones," he said to me. Then his eyes rested on Biffin. "Good afternoon, sir," he said. Biffin nudged me. "He's forgotten me," he whispered. Parsons continued to subject him to an implacable scrutiny. At length he spoke again. "As to your question, Mr. Biffin, which I have had no earlier opportunity of answering, I may say that what you were pleased to allude to as my whiskers, a colloquialism I do not myself employ, are entirely impervious to and unaffected by any climatic variations whatsoever. Your rooms, sir, are on staircase B. True Hospitality. Lecture by Reverend W. The Dragon, the Beast and the False Prophet. All welcome. Scotsman. Scotch reels, corner dances, and waltzes were favourites at the Masons' ball on Tuesday evening. Dancers fought shy of the fogtrot which has proved so popular at other dances. Scots paper. Perhaps they were afraid of missing their steps in the dark. Detroit today completed its first year as the world's largest dry city. The city has prospered during the past year both financially and industrially. Murders, suicides, embezzlements, assaults, robberies and drunkenness were reduced by half. Daily Mail. The record of drunkenness seems still rather high for a teetotal city. A cautious dictator. A cautious dictator. President Wilson, dictating a message to the American nation. At last we may fairly say that the dove of peace has sighted dry land. Pauses. One moment, I'm not quite sure they'll like that word dry. The New York World asserts that President Wilson has promised to set aside the prohibition law if he finds that popular opinion is opposed to it. Mr. Will Jones, MC, DCM, and Mr. Ronald Montmorency. Mr. Will Jones, MC, DCM, and Mr. Ronald Montmorency, Total Exemption 1917, work of national importance, as they appear in the leading parts of the melodrama In His Country's Need. Reading from left to right, Mr. Montmorency, Mr. Jones. Safety first. The fact being now established to the satisfaction of the authorities that the public is composed almost exclusively of drivelling idiots, a campaign has been instituted for adding to the decorations of London by placarding the walls with hints on how to avoid various violent deaths. We are surrounded now by blood-curdling photographs of people being run over by omnibuses or dribbled along the street by horses attached to brewers' drays, these illustrations being accompanied by explanatory notes as to the inevitable result of crossing roads with your eyes shut or your fingers in your ears and endeavoring to alight from moving omnibuses by means of the back somersault or the swallow dive. We are also implored to make quite sure, before alighting from a train, that it is really at a station. As this admirable propaganda is only in its infancy, I submit the following additions to its collection of horrors, which may perhaps inspire others even cleverer than myself to evolve new methods of protecting the public from themselves. Tubes. A picture of a widow wringing her hands with grief, and under it this pungent hint: this is the widow of a man who tried to light his cigarette on the live rail. A picture of a man who has been cut in half, with, say, a crisp little couplet: here are two portions of Benjamin Yates who scorned the request to stand clear of the gates. A photograph of the interior of a hospital ward full of patients, with the following: interior of a ward in the Piccadilly Hospital, exclusively for patients who stepped off the moving staircase with the wrong foot. Trains. A picture of a stately building standing in its own grounds with the description: the NSE&W Railway Orphanage for children whose parents crossed the line by the track instead of the footbridge. A picture of a decapitated body with the poignant comment: be warned by the ending of Ferdinand Goshen who leaned out of window while the train was in motion. And perhaps a few general hints such as: 1. In stepping off an omnibus always alight feet first. 2. In crossing crowded thoroughfares, proceed through the traffic, not under it. 3. Before stepping from the pavement make quite sure that there is a road there, etc., etc. Imagination, color, that's all that's wanted, and if this propaganda is carried far enough the safety of the public will be assured, for either they really will try not to be killed while traveling or walking in the streets, or they will stay indoors altogether. A disciplinarian. Schoolmistress's resignation. Miss will have the satisfaction of knowing that she has left her mark on those who have passed through her hands. Provincial paper. Closing scores in the professional golf match were Newman 14,835. Inman 13,343. Provincial paper. This high scoring was due, we understand, to the large number of losing hazards which had to be negotiated. Aerial fights to and from towns on the coast are to be a feature of Hythe's holiday season. Belfast Weekly News. We are all in favor of popularizing aviation, but we think this is overdoing it. I hope you don't smoke. Director of old established firm. I hope you don't smoke. The new boy. No, give an IT up. Find IT puffs me for jazzin'. Spring cleaning. The hailstorm stopped, a watery sun came out, and late that night I clearly saw the moon. The lilac did not actually sprout, but looked as if it ought to do in June. I did not say, my love, it is the spring. I rubbed my chilblains in a cheerful way and asked if there was some warm woolen thing my wife had bought me for the 1st of May, and, just to keep the ancient customs green, we said we'd give the poor old house a clean. Good Mr. Ware came down with all his men, and filled the house with lovely oily pails, and went away to lunch at 10:30, and came again at tea time with some nails, and laid a ladder on the daffodil, and opened all the windows they could see, and glowered fiercely from the window-sill on me and Mrs. Tomkinson at tea, and set large quantities of booby traps, and then went home, a little tired, perhaps. They left their paint pots strewn about the stair, and switched the lights off, but I knew the game. They took the geyser, none could tell me where, it was impossible to wash my frame. The painted windows would not shut again, but gaped forever at the eastern skies. The house was full of icicles and rain. The bedrooms smelled of turpentine and size, and if there be a more unpleasant smell, I have no doubt that that was there as well. My wife went out and left me all alone, while more men came and clamoured at the door to strip the house of everything I own, the curtains and the carpets from the floor, the kitchen range, the cushions and the stove, and ask me things that husbands never know. Is this air paint the proper shade of mauve? Or where is it this lino has to go? I slunk into the cellar with the cat, this being where the men had put my hat. I cowered in the smoking room, unmanned. The days dragged by and still the men were here. And then I said, I too will take a hand, and borrowed lots of decorating gear. I painted the conservatory blue, I painted all the rabbit hutches red, I painted chairs in every kind of hue, a summer house, a table and a shed, and all of it was very much more fair than any of the work of Mr. Ware. But all his men were stung with sudden pique and worked as never a worker worked before. They decorated madly for a week, and then the last one tottered from the door, and I was left, still working day and night, for I have found a way of keeping warm, and putting paint on everything in sight is surely art's most satisfying form. I know no joy so simple and so true as painting the conservatory blue. Aph the professor, in his cage, intended to study the language of monkeys. But, when the kettle upset, the monkeys had an opportunity of studying the language of professors. The last of his race. It is interesting, though ill-mannered, to watch other people at a railway bookstall and guess their choice of literature from their outward appearance. Had you pursued this diversion, however, in the case of Mr. Harring A. Jones as he stood before the bookstall at Paddington, you would, I fear, have been far out in your conjecture. For Mr. Jones, who had the indeterminate bald-headedness of the bank cashier and might have been anything from 35 to 60, did not purchase a volume of essays or a political autobiography, but selected a flaming 1.6 narrative of spy hunts and Secret Service intrigue. Still, how could you have guessed that Mr. Jones's placid countenance and rotund frame concealed an imagination that was almost boyish in its unsatisfied craving for adventure? Humdrum year had succeeded humdrum year, yet he had never despaired. Some day would come that great moment when the limelight of the world's wonder would center on him, and he would hold the stage alone. But till its arrival he consoled himself with literature and found vicarious enjoyment in the deeds of others. As long as his imagination could grow lean in its search for treasure amid Alaskan snows, he recked not if reality added an inch or two to his circumference. While he could solve, in fancy, problems that had baffled the acutest investigators. What matter if his type-in got mislaid? And then came war to deposit romance and adventure upon our doorsteps. Mr. Jones was agog with excitement. Espionage, treachery in high places, the hidden hand. Mr. Jones read about them all and shuddered with unholy joy. Perhaps he, an obscure cashier, who could tell? Stranger things had happened. Meanwhile he devoured all the spy literature he could find, for, as he once remarked to himself, in dealing with such gentry you have to mind your P.S. and co. It was his only joke. His literary choice dictated by such considerations, Mr. Jones picked his way delicately across the platforms till he reached his compartment, into the corner of which he stretched himself luxuriously and prepared to enjoy his book. Just before the train started, a lady entered carrying a baby and, greatly to Mr. Jones's annoyance, took the corner seat opposite him. Being a confirmed bachelor, he had a horror of all babies, but this child in particular struck him with disfavor. Seldom, he thought, had he seen such a peevish, discontented expression on any human face. Close on the lady's heels followed a withered old man of the traditional professorial type, who seated himself at the other end of the compartment. Mr. Jones buried himself in his book. For once, however, the narrative failed to entertain him. Beautiful spies lavished their witchery in vain, the sagacity of the hero left him cold. Suddenly an atmosphere of unrest and agitation conveyed itself to him. The train was slowing down in the darkness. The lady opposite was leaning forward, her face pale, her whole attitude tense with excitement. The train stopped. Outside someone was walking along the metals. There came the sound of a guttural remark. The lady put her hand to her heart and, turning to the elderly gentleman, gasped, "Doctor," that was his voice. "They have tracked us." The old man rose quietly and, opening the far door, stood waiting. "But the child," she cried with a sob. "He must be left behind, madam. There is less danger thus. But what am I to do?" She turned to Mr. Jones, looked at him steadily and fixedly, and then, as if satisfied with what she read in him, exclaimed, "You have a good heart. You must keep him. Do not let them have him, too much depends upon it." And before the astonished cashier had time to protest, his fellow travelers had gone and he was alone with the child. But not for long. Just as the train commenced to move again, 3 men entered the compartment. 2 appeared to be servants, but the third was a young man of distinguished appearance, the most conspicuous items of whose attire were a dark Homburg hat and a long cape of continental cut. Mr. Jones's heart missed a beat. Throwing a searching glance around the compartment, the stranger rapped out, "There has been a lady in here." "No," replied Mr. Jones, "on general principles." For answer the stranger picked a cambric handkerchief off the floor. "That's mine," said Mr. Jones hastily. "Perhaps," was the sneering reply. "You will tell me also that the child is yours." "Certainly," said Mr. Jones, ruffled by his cross-examination. "It always has been." The stranger snorted contemptuously. "You are good at explanations. Perhaps you can explain this." Mr. Jones looked down at the baby's coat. To his amazement he beheld a crown and monogram embroidered on it. "That," he replied, taking refuge in fatuity, "is the laundry mark." "Come, come, enough of this fooling. Give me the child." Mr. Jones took no notice. "Give me the child, I say." Mr. Jones paled but did not move. "Very good, then." The stranger turned to his attendants. Rudolph," he said. 2 revolver barrels flashed out. Mr. Jones stood up hastily, the child clutched tightly in his arms. "What do you mean by threatening me like this? What right have you to the child?" "I never heard of such a thing. I shall inform the police." "Porkhound," yelled the stranger, "do you defy me? Me, Count Achtung von Eisenbahn. Give me the babe. I must have him. I will have him. He is ours, our Prince Fritz, the last of the Hohenzollerns." The great moment had come. Jones's face lit up. Death, a hero's death, might claim him, but he would make democracy safe for the world. "Last of the Hohenzollerns," he shouted, "then, by Jove, this is going to be the last of him." And with a yell of triumph he hurled the infant out into the night. From the child in its trajectory came a long ear-splitting shriek, followed by a gentle wailing. Mr. Jones sat up and blinked his eyes. The professorial gentleman was still in the far corner, the lady was still opposite him, the child was wailing softly. The lady smiled. "I'm afraid baby has broken your nap." A passing express frightened him. "Not at all," murmured Mr. Jones incoherently, searching for his novel, the one solace left amid the ruin of his dreams. "Pardon me," said the lady, "but if you are looking for your book you threw it out of the window just before you woke up." Mr. Jones sank back resignedly. His glory had gone, his book had gone. Once again he settled himself in his corner to sleep, perchance to dream. "Jackie, dear, your hands are frightfully dirty. Jackie, dear, your hands are frightfully dirty." "Not frightfully, mummy. A lot of that's shading." Strange behavior of the German envoys. 5 minutes later the German plenipotentiaries reappeared, dived into Allied representatives, emerged, jumped into their car and drove off. Dublin Evening Mail. Chant royal of cricket. When earth awakes as from some dreadful night and doffs her melancholy morning state, when Maybuds burst in blossom and requite our weary eyes for winter's tedious wait, then the pale bard takes down his dusty lyre and strikes the thing with more than usual fire. Myself, compacted of an earthier clay, I oil my bats and greasy homage pay to cricket, who, with emblems of his court, stumps, pads, bails, gloves, begins his summer sway. Cricket in sooth is so fran king of sport. As yet no shadows blur the magic light, the glamour that surrounds the opening date. Illusions yet undashed my soul excite, and of success in luring whispers prate. I see myself in form, my thoughts aspire to reach the giddy summit of desire. Lovers and such may sing a roundelay, waiter that be, to greet returning May. For me, not much, the season's all too short, I hear the mower hum and scent the fray. Cricket in sooth is so Fran, king of sport. A picture stands before my dazzled sight, wherein the hero, ruthlessly elate, defies all bowlers' concentrated spite. That hero is myself, I need not state. 'Tis sweet to see their captain's growing ire, and his relief when I at last retire. 'Tis sweet to run pavilion wards and say, yes, somehow I was seeing them today. Thus modesty demands that I retort to murmured compliments upon my play. Cricket in sooth is so Fran, king of sport. The truth's resemblance is, I own, but slight to these proud visions which my soul inflate. This is the sort of thing, in abject fright I totter down the steps and through the gate. Somehow I reach the pitch and bleat, umpire, is that one leg? What boots it to inquire? The impatient bowler takes one grim survey, speeds to the crease and whirls a lightning ray. No, a fast yorker. Bang! The stumps cavort. Chastened, but not surprised, I go my way. Cricket in sooth is so Fran, king of sport. Lord of the game, for whom these lines I write, fulfill my present hope, watch o'er my fate, defend me from the swerver's puzzling flight, let me not be run out, at any rate. As one who's been for years a constant trier, reward me with an average slightly higher, let it be double figures. This I pray, humblest of boons, before my hair grows grey and time's flight bids me in the last resort try golf, or otherwise your cause betray. Cricket in sooth is so Fran, king of sport. King, what though age's summons I obey, resigned to dull rheumatics and decay, still on one text my hearers I'll exhort, as long as hearers within range will stay. Cricket in sooth is so Fran, king of sport. Royal Horse Guards. Captain, Acting Marquis, W.B. Marquis of Northampton resigns his commission. Provincial paper. But retains, we trust, his acting rank. Spring modes at Murmansk. We, the enthusiasts of the relief force who sailed from England with the fine phrases of the evening press ringing in our ears, have arrived at Murmansk, only to be disappointed and disillusioned. It is not that the expedition looks less attractive than it did, or that our leaders fail to inspire us with confidence. It is because the gilt has disappeared from the sartorial gingerbread of our adventure. Why did we leap forward to volunteer before we were wanted, and continue to leap till, for very boredom, they sent us embarkation orders and a free warrant? Was it simply to escape an English spring? Was it not rather that we might win our furs, might wear the romantic outfit which we were led to believe was de rigueur in the most exclusive circle, namely, the Arctic? What was the first remark of our female relatives when we showed them the War Office telegram? Was it not, of course you must be photographed in your furs and things? No wonder, after the monotony of khaki, if we looked forward to the glory and distinction of fur-lined caps and coats, shackle-toe boots, huge snow goggles and enormous gloves turning hands to savage paws. And now what spectacle greets us at Murmansk, with everybody's camera cleared for action? What is the example set by those to whom we naturally look for light and leading? Behold the general and his staff coming on board in the snow-reflected sunshine flashing with the gold and scarlet trimmings of Whitehall. And what of the old residents, our comrades? They are playing football in shorts and sweaters. The genial RTO cheered us up a little and kept the more resolute of our Arctic heroes in countenance by sporting a magnificent and irresistible fur head-dress, but an RTO can do what would be regarded as nerve in you and me, and, moreover, here is the APM in the familiar flat cap, encircled with the traditional color of authority. Even the nice little Laplander and his lady, driving in to do shopping, drawn on a sleigh by a nicely matched trio of reindeer, was sitting on more furs than he or Mrs. L were wearing, while even the naked team seemed to feel the heat oppressive. I suppose we have come too late in the year for the romance of skins and ski, and must condescend to the familiar gumboot until the mosquito season opens and a man may design some becoming effect in muslin. Of course there is still plenty of snow to be photographed against in the full splendor of a Hyperborean disguise, but is it worthwhile to unpack one's valise for that? And anyhow, would not the atmosphere of the picture be marred, the pose of the explorer be rendered unnatural by his consciousness of insincerity and his fear of imminent suffocation? So the photographic press of England must bear their loss as best they may. Dear Sir, Mr. Gould has authorized this committee to hereby and of this date relinquish the title of World's Open Champion at tennis. He feels it is inexpedient for him to defend his title. Field. It is understood that he is afraid that the strain might make him split another infinitive. Mr. Siddons Kemble, a young Bensonian actor, who plays the part of a poet in Cyrano, is the great-great-grandson of the actress Sarah Siddons and her equally famous brothers, John Philip Kemble, Charles Kemble and Henry Stephen Kemble. Evening News. There must have been a remarkable amount of close intermarriage in the Kemble family. Royal Academy, First Depressions. Full Speed Ahead, Ulysses, Disillusioned. Full Speed Ahead. I warn you that if this ash falls it may throw me off my balance. Sir William Bull, to Mr. Hacker. I warn you that if this ash falls it may throw me off my balance. Pulvis et umbra. Pulvis et umbra. Excited spectator. 2-1 on Umbra. Disgusted artist. What's the good of my trying to paint her when she keeps on falling asleep? Oh, do hurry up and finish. Oh, do hurry up and finish. I'm growing out of my clothes. No, this is not a joke. The Right Honourable Mr. Justice Darling. No, this is not a joke. Let them face the camera if they like. The donkey. Let them face the camera if they like. For my part, I'm at my best in profile. Cynical taxi driver. Here, hi, me lord. You've made a mistake, you've give me tuppence too much. The cook. With acknowledgments to Tennyson and Calverley. Urged by the government, with loyal step I to the Labour Bureau made my way to find a cook, and there beheld a queen, tall, fair, arrayed in feathers and in fur and all things beautiful. Whom when I saw, Madam, said I, they tell me, who should know, that you have skill of Mrs. Beeton's art. If that be so, she nodded yes, and I assumed a courage, though I had it not, and spoke again. Then tell me, if you will, of your experience and past career. Whence come you? And the cook, why not, replied, I come from haunts of bomb and shell, I've toyed with lathes and gauges, I've sparkled out a sudden swell with quite unheard of wages. By 30 shops I've paused to buy silk stockings, skirts and undies, in 50 stores I've sat to try smart tango boots for Sundays. Down Bond Street gaily would I float, buy chairs, pianos, tables, with here and there a sealskin coat, and here and there some sables. I'd slip, I'd slide, I'd jazz, I'd glide, I'd foxtrot, 1 and 2 step, and show with pardonable pride my skill at every new step. I'd dance until my soles wore raw, when, tired of dissipation, I'd lie in bed whole weeks and draw my out-of-work donation. And when that palled I'd rise to see what fortunes cooks are earning, and how the ladies long for me with dumb pathetic yearning. I flit about, I skip, I roam through houses past the telling, through many a stately ducal home, and many a Mayfair dwelling. I chatter in the servants' hall, I make a sudden sally, and with the parlourmaid I brawl or bicker with the valet. I murmur under moon and stars with blue and khaki lovers, I linger in resplendent bars with golden taxi shovers. But out again I come and know that fate will fail me never, for wars may come and wars may go, but cooks go on forever. Sun eclipse in May. Wireless operators help asked. Daily paper. We ought all to put our shoulders to the wheel and make this victory eclipse a big thing. All the lumpkins are clever and some of them are brilliant. The head of the family, Lord Durham, is an exceptionally ready and witty man. The Globe. Readers of Goldsmith may suggest that Anthony Lumpkin, Esquire, was not a brilliant lumpkin, but it may well be that he was only distantly connected with that branch of the family from which Lord Durham traces his descent. In this connection a correspondent suggests the following train of thought: Lambton, lambkin, lump, offcoal, kin. We stand at the noon of the greatest day the world has seen, with all the hideous darkness of the night behind and all the glory of the dawn before. Mr. Arthur Mee in Lloyd's News. It looks as if the dawn would be a day late. Germany draws the pen. It's not exactly a sabre, but I dare say I can contrive to keep it rattling for a bit. Essence of Parliament. Monday, May 5 th. Sir Auckland Geddes is the maid of all work of the Ministry. Deputizing for the President of the Board of Trade, he had an opportunity of displaying an encyclopedic knowledge which fully justified his position as President-elect of a Canadian university. Mr. Joynson Hicks probably thought he had floored him with a poser on gas scrubbing, but Sir Auckland knew all about it. He is discreet as he is erudite. An inquiry about meat imports elicited plenty of information about ewe mutton and wether mutton, but not a word about the Matrion and other exotic beef recently foisted upon London consumers. Mr. Rimmer is one of the most attractive and enterprising of the new members. But I am afraid, despite his cheery appearance, that he is a bit of a pessimist. With peace believed to be so near, it was distinctly depressing to find him calling attention to the danger of a deficiency of pit props in any future war and refusing to be put off with the usual official answer, in view of the urgency of the question. There are few topics which excite more general interest in the House than the shortage of whiskey. When, in reply to a complaint by Colonel Thorne that a firm of Scotch distillers had refused to furnish their customers with adequate supplies, Mr. George Roberts remarked that he would like to be supplied with specific cases, he was, no doubt unconsciously, expressing an almost universal desire. Before the war, as we learned from Mr. Illingworth, government offices used to send on the average about 40,000 telegrams a month. At the end of it the number had risen to close on 1 million. Much of the increase is due, no doubt, to zeal for the rapid dispatch of public business, but some, one fears, to the natural tendency of dugouts, even in Whitehall, to protect themselves with wire entanglements. If one were to believe all that the Scottish members said about their own country in the debate upon the Housing, Scotland, Bill, Dr. Johnson's jibes would be abundantly justified. Half the population, according to Sir Donald Maclean, are living in such overcrowded conditions that the wonder is that any of the children survive to man's estate, and still more that they retain sufficient energy to run most of the British Empire. But in the circumstances a certain amount of exaggeration may be forgiven. When it is a case of touching the imperial exchequer for local advantage, the Scot is no whit behind the Irishman in making the poor face. Tuesday, May 6 th. The Scottish peers are no less impressed with the miserable condition of their country. Lord Fortiviat declared that in the Western Hebrides the housing accommodation was no better than the caves of primitive man. Yet these cave dwellers furnished some of the stoutest recruits to the British Army. Perhaps it was their early experience that made them so much at home in the trenches. Their lordships gave a second reading to the Solicitors' Bill, designed to enable the Incorporated Law Society to punish as well as try offending attorneys, instead of leaving their sentences to be determined by a divisional court. The Lord Chancellor and Lord Buckmaster were of one mind in thinking that the measure would be enthusiastically welcomed by the lower branch of their profession, presumably on the principle of better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. I come to bury food control also to praise it. Mr. G. H. Roberts. I come to bury food control, also to praise it. The issue of an official pamphlet on the classics in British education aroused the wrath of Colonel Yate, who contemptuously asked what such like subjects had to do with Reconstruction. Before the minister could answer, Sir John Rees, fearing lest all Anglo-Indians should be thought to hold the same cultural standard, jumped to his feet to declare that he had read the pamphlet and found it admirable. Of all the new departments instituted during the war, the Food Ministry has best justified its existence. Mr. George Roberts's account of its activities was very well received, and many regrets were expressed that he should have come to bury Caesar as well as to praise him. Mr. Clines, to whom and the late Lord Rhondda much of the ministry's success was due, was particularly insistent on the need of some permanent government control, to counter the machinations of the food trusts. The chief criticisms of the ministry related to its milk policy, and these were appropriately dealt with by Mr. McCurdy. Wednesday, May 7. In Downing Street, apparently Mesopotamia is not regarded as a blessed word, for when Colonel Wedgwood asked whether that country, after its future status had been decided, would be taken out of the hands of the Foreign Office, Mr. Cecil Harmsworth fervently replied, "I hope so. I wonder whether Sir David Beatty, now enjoying a well-earned holiday on the Riviera, is as grateful as he ought to be to Commander Bellairs for trying to get him back into harness. He has been promised both by Mr. Balfour and Mr. Long the reversion of Sir Rosslyn Wemyss' post as First Sea Lord as soon as it is vacant. But no immediate change is contemplated. Meantime it is pleasant to learn from Mr. Long that the late C-in-C of the Grand Fleet has been consulted on naval policy since the armistice. So he is not yet quite forgotten." From Field Marshal to journalist. Lord French's promotion. A new form of wireless telegraphy has been invented by the Post Office officials. When really urgent messages are handed in for transmission to Paris, they dispatch them by passenger train. They find this method much quicker than cabling. An attempt by Sir Donald Maclean to draw attention to the recent exploits of the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland in the field of journalism was severely suppressed by the Speaker, who perhaps thinks that the less said about them the better. It seems a pity that the press censor should have been demobilized just when his famous blue pencil might have been really useful. Recognizing that in the present temper of the House a frontal attack upon imperial preference was a forlorn hope, the Free Traders sought to destroy it by an enfilading fire. But their ingenious attempt, in the alleged interest of the consumer, to extend to China tea the same reduction as to the product of India and Ceylon was easily defeated. Mr. Chamberlain means to have no chinks in his armor. Thursday, May 8. When the Ministry of Health Bill was in the Commons, some objection was raised to the multiplicity of powers conferred upon it. But if certain noble lords could have their way, the measure would become a veritable octopus, stretching its absorptive tentacles over all the departments of state. It would take over the inspectorship of factories from the Home Office, the control of quack medicines from the Privy Council, and the relief of the poor from the local government board. Fortunately for Dr. Addison, the government refused to throw these further burdens upon him. After all, Disraeli's famous phrase, "Sanitas sanitatum omnia sanitas," must not be translated too literally. Members were all agog to hear what the government might have to say about the peace terms announced this morning. Mr. Bottomley challenged the adequacy of the financial provisions, but the Home Secretary evidently felt unequal to a controversy with so great an expert in money matters, and requested him to wait for his big brother Mr. Bonelaw. A proposal by Mr. Sidney Arnold to raise the limit of exemption from income tax from £130 to £250 was strongly backed by the Labour Party. In resisting it, the Chancellor of the Exchequer pointed out that the Labour Party had opposed indirect taxation and now they were opposing direct taxation. In what form did they consider that working men should contribute to the expenses of their country? No answer to this blunt question was forthcoming. The children's bells. The bells of St. Clement's, which have been too much out of order to ring for many years, are now being restored. It is hoped they will be ready to ring the peace in. Where are your oranges? Where are your lemons? What, are you silent now, bells of St. Clement's? You, of all bells that rang once in old London, you, of all bells that sang, utterly undone. You whom the children know ere they know letters, making Big Ben himself call you his betters. Where are your lovely tones, fruitful and mellow, full-flavoured orange gold, clear lemon yellow? Ring again, sing again, bells of St. Clement's. Call as you swing again, oranges, lemons. Fatherless children are listening near you, sing for the children, the fathers will hear you. Musical reconstruction by our special reporter, who is also busy with the Coal Commission. At the meeting of the Musical Reconstruction Commission last Saturday, the President, Mr. Justice Bland, announced the resignation of Mr. Patrick Horan, an Irish choirmaster, owing to the results of his adjudicating between the competing Sinn Féin brass bands at a Festival festival, held at Athlone on Easter Monday. Mr. Justice Bland said that he felt sure he was interpreting the feelings of all the members of the Commission in uniting to express regret at Mr. Horan's resignation and hope for his speedy recovery from his injuries. Continuing, the President said he had received a letter from the Minister of Music, informing him that Sir Hercules Plunkett, KBE, Chairman of the Amalgamated Society of Mandolin, Balalika and Banjo Makers, had been invited to fill the vacant place. Mr. Tony Hole, Scriabine Fellow of Syndicalist Economics at Caius College, Cambridge, then presented a memorandum on the Guild control of composers on the basis of a 40-hour week, with equal opportunity for performance, the economic use of orchestral resources and the preferential treatment of Russian folk tunes as thematic material. All members of the Guild should receive the same salary free of income tax, all performances should be free, and applause or encores prohibited as likely to lead to the rupture of artistic solidarity. The profits from the sale of programs should go into the National Exchequer, but should be earmarked for a pension fund for the relief of composers on their compulsory retirement at the age of 60. Examined by Sir Leonardo Spaghetti Coyne, Mr. Hole said that he was not aware that the mortality among monkeys employed in the piano organ industry during the late war was excessive. but he agreed that the fearlessness shown by the monkeys at the zoo in the course of air raids deserved a special decoration. Mr. William Susie, who next occupied the chair, was examined by Mr. Moody MacTair on the question of the nationalization of royalty ballads. Mr. MacTair, quoting an estimate by a fellow of the Thermaero Statistical Society, that the ballad composers of the country could produce 190,000 million ballads in 580 years, asked the witness whether it would be legitimate that a royalty charge should be made on every ballad produced during that period for the benefit of certain individuals of future generations. Mr. Susie replied that the state had recognized the right of royalties and therefore he saw no good reason for discontinuing the charge. Mr. Gladney Jebb: Are you aware that there have been more cases of influenza amongst people who have attended royalty ballad concerts in 1918 than amongst all the troops who served on the Palestine front since 1916? Mr. Susie challenged Mr. Jebb to produce his statistics, and it was arranged, at the suggestion of the President, that Mr. Jebb should be given facilities to proceed to Jericho and collect them. After the luncheon interval, Mr. Cyril Blunt read a report, which he had prepared at the request of the Commission, on the nationalization of the folk song industry. He said that it was a scandalous paradox that this natural and obvious reform had hitherto been successfully resisted by unscrupulous individualistic action. Folk tunes were the product of and belonged to the people, but they had been seized, exploited and perverted by composers, who should be forced to refund the profits they had derived from their robbery. The conservation of our national musical resources should be jealously guarded, and the collection, notation and harmonization of these tunes carried on under rigorous state supervision. At the same time, the state might issue licenses for the symphonic use of folk tunes, the profits from the sale of these licenses to be devoted to the maintenance of village festivals, at which only genuine folk music should be performed by the oldest inhabitants. Asked by Sir Mark Holloway what he meant by genuine folk music, Mr. Blunt said, "Tunes of which it is impossible to assign the authorship to a known composer." Mr. Kilcranky Fox, who was the next witness, was subjected to a very searching examination by Mr. Moody MacTair, Mr. Gladney Jebb and Sir Leonardo Spaghetti Coyne. Mr. Moody MacTair: Are you aware that brass instrument players are habitually sweated in orchestras and bands? It depends on what you mean. I certainly admit that their activities often conduce to profuse perspiration. Mr. Moody MacTair: Have you ever played the trombone yourself? No, nor the lyre either. Mr. Gladney Jebb: Are you prepared to deny that the strain on the nerves of players in jazz bands, especially drums, is greater than that endured by soldiers in the front-line trenches during an intense bombardment? As a rule, I am prepared to deny at sight any statement for which you are responsible, but I concede you the big drum. Sir Leonardo Spaghetti Coyne: Are you aware that, owing to profiteering in the cloth trade, organ grinders have been unable to provide their simian assistants with proper habiliments during the recent inclement weather? Apes are apes though clothed in scarlet, or broadcloth. I have not noticed any shabbiness of late in the garb of those with whom I am acquainted. The commission broke up at a late hour. At the next meeting evidence will be taken on the subject of the housing of musical seals and the alleged profiteering of dealers in burnt cork at the expense of players in jazz bands. Room Shan. Waiter, a demobilized sergeant, as staff officer enters. Room Shan. For sale, standard baby. Lately overhauled. Cape Times. Inhuman, we call it. The Conquering Celt. Mr. Robert Aloffren, writing in the Times of the 2nd of May, observes, the Celt is tattooed in his cradle with this historic belief in his race, a free Ireland. The Sassenach, stodgy and prosy, lacks any distinguishing mark. The Semite has merely been nosy right back to the days of the Ark. The Teuton proclaims himself Edel and points to his family tree, but the Celt is tattooed in his cradle with Erin the Free. Some races inherit a stigma, and some find a spur in their past, but Ireland's ancestral enigma has now been unravelled at last, for the Celt, the original Gaedel, apart from his proud pedigree, is always tattooed in his cradle with Erin the Free. The actual process of branding I dare not attempt to describe. Some themes are too high and outstanding for bards of the doggerel tribe, but patriot minstrels will ladle out lauds on the parents who see that the Celt is tattooed in his cradle with Erin the Free. At the play. Judith. That Mr. Arnold Bennett was actuated by the very highest motives when he set out to edit the apocryphal scriptures for stage purposes, nobody would dream of doubting. It is the more unfortunate that by making the rest of the play very dull he should have thrown into relief certain features in the story of Judith which the original author had preferred to treat with a commendable reticence. It will be recalled that in the ancient version Holofernes made a feast for Judith and drank much more wine than he had drunk at any time in one day since he was born. That he then lay down on his bed in a state of stupor, and that Judith, taking advantage of his torpid condition, approached and cut off his head at her leisure with his own falchion. The decency of this arrangement is easily apparent. It obviated the necessity for wanton allurements on the part of Judith and amorous advances on the side of the commander-in-chief. Incidentally, it is more reasonable to assume that so virile a warrior would yield to nothing short of intoxication than that he would be persuaded, while still remaining sober, to take a brief rest, on the ground of temporary indisposition, and so go like a lamb to the slaughter, as he does in the play. Manual exercise. Manual exercise. Bagays, Mr. Thesiger. Canst do this with thy hands, woman? Judith, Miss Lilla McCarthy. Nay, mightiness, thy slave can do no better than this poor trick. To do Miss Lilla McCarthy justice, she went through a scene embarrassing alike to actors and audience with as much dignity and aloofness as the situation admitted. In a previous scene there had been one rather gratuitous posture which we might perhaps have been spared, but, for the rest, from the moment when she first entered, a noble figure in her robes of widowhood, veiling all but the oval of her face, pale and passionless, she played with a fine restraint, giving us confidence in her reserve of strength and never once allowing her high purpose to be forgotten. It was not her fault if, in the night scene, amid a generous exposure of physical facts, we missed the less palpable atmosphere of impending doom. Certainly the holophones of Mr. Claude King never for a moment suggested it. I admit that I had not hitherto seen an Assyrian officer making love on the edge of his grave and so had no exact precedent to go by, but this officer, with his face far too well groomed for the conclusion of a heavy banquet, and those rather anemic and perfunctory gestures of endearment, which had nothing to do with the somber forces of elemental passion, gave no hint of the sinister workings of fate. This lack of atmosphere pervaded GHQ. Apart from Miss McCarthy, Mr. Thesiger, whose performance as Bagoes must have astonished those who only knew him on the stage as a frivolous flaneur, was the sole character who conveyed any sense of the general uncanniness of things. Mr. Arnold Bennett's own novelties, the very rapid fraternization of Judith's little Cockney maid with the enemy, her own inexplicable love at first sight for an Ammonite pervert, the laborious pretentiousness of Ozias, the governor of Bethulia, the tedious garrulity of the oldest inhabitant, and the topical reference, in the manner of pantomime, to the War of 1914 to 1918. These offered no great improvement on the original narrative. On the other hand, his neglect to show us the head of Holofernes, which constitutes so dramatic a property in the Book of Judith, was a noticeable omission. But perhaps he was well advised to leave it out, for I thought I detected the significant presence of Mr. Billing in the stalls. I ought perhaps to add that there was a messenger whose refinement of speech greatly struck me. He said that he came from Jerusalem, but he sounded as if he came from Belial. A party of police have been stationed in and around the premises, and today their number were augmented by a party of Scottish Horse Marines. Cork paper. We are glad to see this historic unit bobbing up again. CKS and USA. The news that our own and only C.K.S. the great Culm of literature and the Weecham of literature as he is alternatively and affectionately known to the members of the Johnson Club, was on his way to America aroused the liveliest excitement among our fellow war winners, and preparations on a grand scale were made for his reception. The Statue of Liberty was transformed to resemble Mnemosyne, pronounced more or less to rhyme with limousine, the mother of the muses, and a bodyguard of poets, novelists, writers, journalists and brainy boys generally was drawn up on the quay. As soon as the new Columbus was through the customs, these formed a procession and escorted him to his hotel, where a private suite had been engaged, with hot and cold ink laid on. At a banquet given by the Highbrow Club in the evening, the illustrious visitor was the principal guest. As a pretty compliment, the floral decorations were all of shamrock, and everything in the menu was spherical, or nearly so, beginning with radishes and passing on to rissoles, dumplings, potatoes and globe artichokes, plum pudding and tapioca. Humorous allusions to the eastern and western hemispheres were of constant occurrence. In response to the toast of literature, ancient and modern coupled with the name of its most vigilant champion, Mr. Shorter said that he was indeed happy to be on soil hallowed by association with so many writers of merit. To name them would be invidious, but he might say that he had enjoyed the pleasure of intimate correspondence with a large number of them, all of whom had testified to the value which they set upon his friendship. Although he looked upon himself as the least of men, cries of "No, no," yet he should always be proud to remember that some of his criticisms had not fallen on stony ground. Loud cheers. He had in his pocket friendly letters from men whose eminence would electrify his hearers. Sensation. He would not read them, moans of despair, because that would be to break the seal of secrecy. Loud cheers and singing, for he's a jolly short fellow. Mr. Shorter's main purpose is to meet the best American minds in friendly intercourse and thus to promote Britannico-Columbian amity and an even freer interchange of ideas than the theatre now ensures. To this end he has visited or will visit every place of importance, including the Bowery, Chinatown, Uncle Tom's Cabin, the Yosemite Valley, Niagara, Tuxedo, Chicago, the Waldorf Astoria, Bunkers Hill, Milwaukee, Chautauqua, the Clover Club, Greenwich Village and Troy. Mr. Shorter's visit to America is otherwise a purely private one. More Irish than the Irish though he is known to be, he has for the moment sheathed his shillelagh. Nonetheless, the condition of Ireland being so critical, he hopes to address a few meetings on the aspirations of his adopted country. Although the tour is of this private character, Mr. Shorter is not unprepared to record his opinions as they occur to him or to continue to nourish his mind on the latest productions of the human intellect. His traveling entourage comprises a brace of highly trained typists, a librarian, the keeper of the paper knife and a faithful stenographer known as Boswell, who is pledged to miss none of the master's dicta. During the voyage Mr. Shorter had the services of a special Marconi operator, so that he might receive half-hourly bulletins as to the state of the publishing world, contents of the literary papers, deaths of editors and fellow critics, new knighthoods and so forth. The Atlantic, on the whole, did not displease him. Details of the tour which have already reached home indicate that its success is profound. At Boston Mr. Shorter, although his visit was brief, found time to deliver his famous causerie, Men of Letters Whom I Have Influenced, with special reference to George Meredith. At Waterbury, which there is some possibility of renaming Shorterbury, the great critic was made the recipient of an address of welcome and a watch. At Pittsburgh the freedom of the Carnegie libraries all over the world was conferred upon him by the famous Iron Master. At Haworth, Min. Mr. Shorter presented the postmaster with an autographed copy of his magnum opus on the bronze. At Salt Lake City he enchanted the Mormon elders by anecdotes of Thackeray's relations with their namesake, the London publisher. At Peoria, Ill., he kept his audience in roars by recounting the good sayings of his critical confrère, Sir William Robertson Nicoll. At Philadelphia a very old man, who claimed to be a younger brother of Mr. Rochester, in Jane Eyre, publicly embraced the illustrious visitor and borrowed $2. The rumor that Mr. Shorter is to be appointed as our ambassador in Washington must not be too lightly dismissed. America often sends us a man of letters, Lowell, for example, and hey, why should we not return the compliment? It would be a better appointment than many that could be named. The fact cannot be concealed that at home the absence of Mr. Shorter in America is seriously felt. Fleet Street wears a bereaved air and Dublin is conscious of a poignant loss. As for our authors, they are in a state of dismay. Some, it is true, like mice when the cat is away, are taking liberties, but most are paralyzed by the knowledge that the watchful eye is not there, the hand, so instant to blame or praise, is resting. Even publishers, normally an insensitive race, are shaken, and books that were to have been issued have been held back. For what is the use of bringing out new books if CKS is not here to pass definitive comments upon them before their ink is dry? England's loss is, however, America's gain. A new cocktail has been named after him. Within the law. The peace treaty. What really impressed the Germans most of all with the power of the Big Four was the third clause of Section 3, as given in the press, left bank of the Rhine. Germany must not maintain or construct any fortifications less than 50 kilometers to the east of the Rhine. Even Wilhelm himself never succeeded in reversing the course of this famous river. The fifth issue of the Indian Yearbook is issued a little later than the earlier editions. For this the editor would ask immunity. Preface to the Indian Yearbook. Granted. Mr. Punch invariably adopts the same order of procedure in regard to his own publications. More alleviations. The late James Payn, who, as is well known, waged a merciless war against sham admiration in literature, happened one day to hear me quote that tremendous fellow, Sibrandus Scufnaburgensis. The particular lines I mean are those in which he says, "Then I went indoors, brought out a loaf, half a cheese and a bottle of Chablis, lay on the grass and forgot the oath over a jolly chapter of Rabelais." Mr. Payn remarked sharply, it would cost him some trouble to find one. I've never found a jolly chapter of Rabelais in my life, and what's more I mean to say so some day and watch the faces. Well, Mr. Payn believed in stating his own views truthfully. No doubt the necessity of finding a rhyme for Chablis had something to do with the appearance of Rabelais' name at the end of that line. But that cannot have been the reason why Pope, being under no compulsion of rhyme, brought Rabelais into his lines, O thou! Whatever title please thine ear, Dean, Drapier, Bickerstaff or Gulliver. Whether thou choose servant's serious air or laugh and shake in Rabelais' easy chair. I don't much care whether I have quoted correctly or not. I suggested last week in these columns that one might be allowed, as a compensation for advancing years, to use one's quotations without fastidious regard for their accuracy. On consideration, I don't see why this liberty should not be even further extended. I can see, in my mind's eye, Horatio, whole masterpieces coming within its scope and yielding with a sufficiently bad grace to a courageous candor like James Payn's. Why should Don Quixote, for instance, tyrannize over us. He has had a good innings, in the course of which, it is only fair to acknowledge, he has been enormously helped by his henchman, Sancho Panza, a fellow of infinite wit, no doubt. There are however readers who set up these two as idols and would compel us to kneel to them, especially when Sancho receives the appointment of governor of Barataria. I acknowledge I am a constant devotee of Don Quixote and his Sancho, but it is conceivable that there are people who have no liking for them. Let such, if they are old enough, proclaim it, as James Payn did his opinion about Rabelais' fun. I should like to bring certain long poems of universal renown within the scope of my principle. What about Paradise Lost? Did any woman, except perhaps George Eliot, ever read it throughout unless under scholastic compulsion? I doubt it. Her sense of humor would not allow her to. Take, for instance, the following lines, describing the simple amusements of our first parents, about them frisking played all beasts of the earth since wild, and of all chase in wood or wilderness, forest or den. Sporting the lion ramped, and in his paw dandled the kid, bears, tigers, ounces, pards, gamboled before them, the unwieldy elephant, to make them mirth, used all his might, and wreathed his lithe proboscis. Now, if anybody does not like Milton's fun, why, in the name of a lithe proboscis should he not say so, in his mature middle age? There is a shamelessness among many in both high and low life that calls for vehement protest. The question with many seems to be how near they can come to the verge of decency without falling over. Ashore and afloat. We have noticed a few who have had quite a narrow escape. Way out. Thoughts on leaving the Crystal Palace. A brigadier or two beside the portal to cry to me with anguish half disguised, "Hail and farewell, O brother!" Pomp is mortal, something, I fancied, something of this sort'll happen to me when I'm demobilized. That was an error. Not a drum was sounded, no personage, no panoply, no pep. Only a single private who expounded my pathway out, and I went forth dumbfounded, merely remembering to mind the step. Nothing spectacular and nothing solemn, no company of men that I might drill, and either tick 'em off or else extol 'em and give 'em facing left, advance in column and leave 'em marching onwards till they butted into something. Never a blooming ultimate kit inspection as I passed, nor sound of sergeant majors' voices booming, nor weary stance while aides de camp were fuming, not even a practice fire drill at the last. And that's the end. Tomorrow I'll awaken to meet a world of doubtfulness and gloom, by orders and by adjutants forsaken, and none to tell what action should be taken, if any, through what channels, and by whom. But dreams remain amidst the new disaster. There shall be visions when the firelight burns, squads of recruits forever doubling faster, fresh clothing issues from the quartermaster and audit boards and absentee returns. I shall forget a while civilian fashions and watch the PT merchants on the square, and polish tins and soothe the colonel's passions, and mount the guard and go and see the rations and bid departed days be as you were. And souvenirs. I know there are a number who stuff their homes with memories of dread. The ancient hat stand in the hall encumber with piccolopes and delight to slumber with heaps of nasty nose caps round their bed. Not I, the bard. When delicately suited I move again amid the mufti swarms, since trophies from the front may be disputed, I'll flaunt the only spoils that I have looted, my little library of army forms. EVOE. Rantsaw's insolent act. Under this heading the Daily Mail states that before entering the Trianon Palace Hotel to meet the Allies, Count Brockdorff-Rantzau took a last deliberate puff at his cigarette and dropped it on the steps, in the middle of a group of Allied officials. We understand that our contemporary feels that it would have been more in keeping with Germany's political and economic position had the Count humbly extinguished the cigarette and placed it in his waistcoat pocket for future use. Spitable offices will be placed at the disposal of the German peace delegates. Evening paper. It is the truest hospitality to make provision for your guests' peculiarities. First reveler. I say, what stunt is this? A birthday or something? Second ditto. Dunno, fancy it's somebody's rag. First ditto. Shouldn't one say cheerio to the blighter? Our booking office. By Mr. Punch's staff of learned clerks. The Chartered Adventurer, Skeffington, is what Agnes and Egerton Castle rather pleasantly call their latest hero, Terence O'Flaherty, impecunious gentleman of fortune, lover and general exponent of the picturesque arts of romance. In a special sense indeed, since you have him not only adventuring for fame and fortune, but, as a byproduct, turning his exploits into material for a worked-out early Victorian novelist, whose ghost he had, in a more than usually impecunious moment, consented to become. I found this same unfortunate author, gravelled for lack of sensational matter, at once the most entertaining and original figure in the book, whose course is, to tell the truth, marked otherwise by no very conspicuous freshness. The particular adventure to which O'Flaherty and his companion, Lord Marlowe, are here devoted, is concerned with the intrigues of Madame la Duchesse de Berry on behalf of her son, as de jure King of France, under the title of Charles X. They provide an environment singularly apt for such affairs, the wild venture and the abortive, forgotten rising in which it culminated give color to a multitude of dashing exploits. In themselves, however, these follow what might be called common form, showing the two young men exposed to a sufficiency of danger and exhibiting that blend of folly and gallantry expected of their situation. As to the former quality, when, I wonder, will the heroes of romantic fiction learn that the pretty youth with flashing eyes contradicted by a manner of singular modesty, is really, well, what common folk could have known her for in the first glance? To sum up, I should call the Chartered Adventurer admirable for almost anyone else's writing, but just a little below the best Castilian standard. The Pagan, Methuen, certainly deserves to be called one of the uncommon stories. Whether it will be a popular success is of course a different matter. At least it confirms my previous suspicion, that Mr. Charles Inge is a novelist who takes his art seriously and is not afraid of originality. The moral of his tale, which perhaps hardly needs much enforcing today, is, don't be too much impressed with the idea of the Superman, and especially don't try to go one better. That was the attempt that broke up the happy home where John Witherson had lived with his wife, his infant son and his mother and sister-in-law, too many, but that is beside the point. John had been a schoolmaster, old style, teaching in the ancient faiths, muscular Christianity, play the game, sportsmanship and the rest. But about halfway through the war the apparent invincibility of brutal force began to rattle John's nerves. It rattled them so much that he eventually sold his school, moved his household, including the in-laws, to suburbia, and set up, in partnership with two others of like mind, as instructor of youth, after the jungle law of ruthless efficiency. Not content with this, he proposed also to turn the infant Witherson into a prospective Superman by giving him toy tigers and brief lectures on the rewards of frightfulness. Whereat the mother, finding her protests disregarded, dried her eyes and set herself to fill the poor child's infrequent leisure with antitoxin injections of the higher morality as conveyed in the poetry of Tennyson. You now take my meaning when I speak of Mr. Inge as sufficiently single-minded to brave some danger of unintentional humor. Really, my sketch has done less than justice to a story that will hold your interest, if only for the sincerity with which it is handled. For myself I was first impatient, then derisive, finally curious to know how it was going to end. I rather think this sounds like a victory for Mr. Inge. It will add a new terror to the piece if everybody who has done a year of public life, constable, in or about Whitehall is to make a book about it. Not that Mrs. C.S. Peel does not deserve well of her country. She is evidently a capable person and hustled about the country for the Ministry of Food to some purpose before the days of compulsory rationing. Her general idea seems to be that simple folk are tremendously interested in the most trivial and indirect details of important folk. So she will tell you how Sir Henry REW and Mr. Ulick Wintour were fond of tea, Sir Henry liked a bun as well, how Mr. Kennedy Jones once lent her his car, how Lord Devonport asked if biscuits were included in the voluntary cereal ration, said firmly, yes, they are, how the chauffeur suddenly put on the brake and she bumped into poor M. Fadides, how she visited Bath twice and bought a guidebook information from which she retails, how secretaries of ministers came out to say that ministers would see her in a few moments, and how, beyond and above all, the Queen, when she inspected Westminster Bridge kitchen, asked of a certain substance, "What's that?" and Princess Mary at once replied, "Maize," just like that. This kind of anecdote, by the way, which our long-suffering royal family has to endure in the press might very well be made actionable under a new lèse-majesté law. There are better things than this in the book, but on balance I don't really think it establishes a fair case for existence. The most interesting thing in it is a detailed account of the canteen systems at the Renault and Citroën works near Paris. There is a great falling off in quality as between the pointing man and the anonymous authoress's latest effort, The Man Who Tried Everything, Hutchinson, a fact which may be partly accounted for by the brief time elapsing between its appearance and that of its immediate forerunner, The Man from Trinidad. Her new book is a war spy story, an exacting form of fiction in any event, and deals with German revolutionary machinations in the Orient. It fails because it moves too rapidly and covers far too much ground. The writer has neither the gift nor the general information necessary for this class of adventurous fiction. Her genius lies in her power of reproducing the atmosphere of crime and intrigue, but her Orient and her Orientals seem to have lost their hold on the reader's imagination. And I venture to remind her that it is fatal in this kind of story to replace known facts by unnecessary fiction, for example, to speak, as she does, of a German warship in the Indian Ocean as the Blucher, when all the world knows that that particular vessel was elsewhere. It will be easily understood that she gives us a hero who wins his heart's desire, and numerous plotters of various nationalities who are all safely foiled, the entire romance being conducted with a ladylike absence of the bloodshed that usually accompanies this class of fiction. That is its best recommendation. The fact that the Pearl, Blackwell, is described in its subtitle as a story of school and Oxford life may perhaps somewhat mislead you. Let me therefore hasten to explain that the school is for girls, and the Oxford life is that enjoyed by wearers of whatever may be the modern substitute for skirts. Not too immediately modern indeed, as the events fall within the period of the South African War, a fact that will, of course, much increase their appeal for those whose Oxford memories belong to the same epoch. But it is naturally a book difficult for the male reviewer to appraise with exactitude. All I can say, being unconversant with the domestic politics of a ladies' college, is that I should imagine Miss Winifred Taylor to have given a remarkably true picture of existence therein. Its mixture of academic ambition, sentiment, religious fervor and party spirit seems, as was to be expected, pretty much as we knew it in the masculine camp. The chief point of difference appears to be that Miss Taylor's heroine, Janet, and her friends, all pleasantly individual, are naturally thrown a good deal more upon themselves than is the case with their more fortunate brothers. I have no doubt of the book's success. Girl graduates, past, present and to come, will of course buy it, while in that other Oxford, now so happily reawakening, I can fancy it being read with all the curiosity that naturally attaches to revelations of the unknown land. Urchin, contemptuously. Ha! Your mother takes in washin'. Neighbor. Well, you didn't suppose she'd leave it hanging aht overnight unless your father was in prison, did you? From a report of the Sappengham inquiry, witness, oh, I have a hide like a rhinoceros. Evening paper. This pashidom is new to us. Asterisk 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 end of the Project Gutenberg ebook Punch, or the London Charivari, Volume 156. The 14th of May 1919 asterisk 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 updated editions will replace the previous one. the old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark Symbol Electronic Works 1.0. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation or PGLAF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e. Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3 If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4 Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. 1.e.5 Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. 1.e.6 You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark symbol website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7 Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8 You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2. Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3. Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4. except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3. This work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5. Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6. Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, and C. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark symbol's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark symbol and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification Number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, UT 84116, 801, 596, 1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks.